Welcome to the Deal by Me podcast, where we ask guests to tell us your story. Story can be encouraging, inspiring, and very transforming. We want guests to share their experiences and events in their lives that can benefit someone else. We all have a story, so I ask you to contact us on our website, dealbyme.com, and let us know that you would like to share your story. If you're listening with us on the podcast, please leave us a comment and share on your social media. If you're viewing this on YouTube, we appreciate if you will leave us a comment and consider subscribing to our YouTube channel. We're grateful, very thrilled today to have with us Melisa Caprio. Melisa is a creator, photographer, radio host, and author of Postcards to the Universe. She is an interesting individual. Her inspiration comes from a desire to have a forum where people come together in creative ways for global change. She has her own weekly show titled Postcards to the Universe with Melisa. And so I know you will enjoy hearing her share her story with us today. Melisa, would you share with the listeners where you are being interviewed from and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, James, for having me. I'm really excited to be here with you today. So, where you're calling me at right now, I am in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which many people know because it is spring break right now and all the spring breakers are here. So, I'm from Florida and my background is in visual arts. I studied photography. I did photography for a lot of years, and as we talk and I talk about the book and how the book came about, I wanted to use my creativity and tap into my photography and be able to utilize that in my work. So that's how it sort of came about in the book. But before the book, I was a fine art photographer mostly. I had a little gallery for a while. They used to rent out darkroom space. This is many years ago when we used to use darkrooms. And I worked photographing disabled children doing therapy with dolphins. I did that for like 7 years. So that's a little bit about my background before I created this Postcards to the Universe that came to me as an inspired idea.
Wow, it's exciting. I am very impressed with your uh, bio, with the
Thank
things
you.
that you're doing. One of the first things that popped up to me was uh, what you said. We all dream and we all wish. We
Mm-hmm.
are already good at wishing before we blow out the candles on our first birthday cake. We are wishing when we pull on a wishbone. We are
Mm-hmm.
wishing when we throw coins in a fountain. But then the wish is gone. Rarely thought of again, if ever. Talk about that a little bit for us.
Yeah, so I wanted to, okay, so a little bit of a backstory. So the reason that Postcards was born was when I was leaving the job, a lot of life changes were happening at once, so I was moving house, leaving a job I loved, going through a divorce. So like that all happened at once. So I started asking myself, what's going on? Why is all this happening? And that's when I learned about something called the law of attraction. And the law of attraction is we attract to us the things that we, not necessarily what we want, but maybe where we are projecting energetically, right? those that are like oneself are attracted to each other. So it made me do a little investigation, and I realized we all have these dreams for ourselves, we all have these wishes for ourselves, and we all have these desires, and we think about these things. And especially like I said, like when we blow out our birthday cake, what do we wish for ourselves for the year? If we throw a coin in the fountain, like we close our eyes and we make a wish. So I started thinking, well, how can we consciously be a manifester or a co-creator with the universe? I use the word universe. It's all inclusive. It could be God. It could be whatever you're comfortable with, to bring about these things into our life. And I realized that for me, using my creativity was part of the energetic space I wanted to put myself in, because when I was being creative, I felt very inspired. So my energy, I was feeling joyful, and I was feeling happy, and I was feeling excited about these things. And so I was trying to figure out how I can tap into that energy so that I could raise my own vibration, so that I could bring those things into my life. Because people, we have a tendency to focus on the problems and the things that aren't working instead of the things that are working. So it was a way to refocus my brain, to get me inspired to live a more inspired and joyful life. And of course, gratitude, and I talk about gratitude a lot in the book, is I think one of the most powerful ways to bring those things into our lives, that what we, more of what we already want, is to be grateful for what we already have. So that kind of helped form what the book is about. And I just use it through my photography, and I ask other people to create what I call a manifesting postcard, because there's 30 manifesting postcards and stories in my book of people who created a postcard, sent it out to the universe, and then wrote to me and said, "You're never going to believe it. The wish that I wanted came true." And then they tell me their story, and then we shared their story in the book. So that's basically, in a nutshell, what the book is and
So,
where the wishes come from.
okay, so you said when you do the postcards and send it out to in the universe, are you just sending it out with no address on it, or how,
No,
what do
no.
you mean by that? I'm just see, listeners want to know. They want to
So,
know what you mean.
well, before COVID, I haven't started yet, but I'm going to get back into it. I was doing workshops, but I also asked people to mail them. And on my website, there is an address to mail the postcard. When I receive the postcard, I photograph it. I intuitively take the postcard, I read the affirmation, I read the wish, the manifestation, and then I put my own creativity into it, and I photograph the postcard. And I really, every Monday I call it a magical message. It's the postcard with an affirmation that people have sent me. And when, like I said, when that person's, what they wrote becomes their shows up in their reality as physical form, they share with me their story, and then we talk about how they created the postcard and then how the story came about.
Okay, you talk about I guess questions like, will my life change, or what if I'm
Mhm.
afraid of change? Where were you going with that? What do you had reference to? Were you afraid to make a decision? Were you afraid to move from where you were
Mhm.
to where you wanted to go? What were you talking about when you say that?
Well, when I talk about, I feel like sometimes we know what we need to do to bring in what we want. Let's say it's a career change, for example. We know we're not happy in the job we have. The requirement it's going to take for us to make the change to get to the career that we want can be very scary. And a lot of us people will choose not to make those changes because we're afraid of what's going to happen in our relationships, what's going to happen in our family. What if it requires me to move somewhere and I have to leave where I've lived my whole life? And fear will stop us a lot. Change can be very, very scary. And I feel like a lot of times what happens is if something major happens, it forces you to change. Like people who get hit with illnesses or deaths or get fired from a job, then we're forced to change, right? We don't have a choice anymore. We have to deal with what's in front of us. So, what I've tried to do is be conscious about what I need to change and take the steps and the actions to do that and work through the fear, no matter how scary it is, of those things that we want to change in our lives. Maybe it's a relationship. I mean, it's very scary. What if you've been married for 20 years, but you're so unhappy and the other person is so unhappy, and you know the only way to change and bring some joy into your life is you have to separate, and that's very scary. If we sometimes will be more comfortable living in our own discomfort because we know what it is than not knowing what's out there for us, right?
I agree with you, and I hear what you say. It's just interesting to me when I hear you talk about it, because it seems as if you are searching and and trying to get to a certain place.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, yes. You're searching and you're trying to get yourself into a different place, whether that be emotionally or physically. It really doesn't matter which one, but we're somewhere where we're no longer happy and we're no longer joyful and we have no inspiration in our lives, and we want to make those changes, and a lot of times we don't know exactly what it is we need to do to make the changes, right? We just know we don't like the way we feel anymore, right? I don't like the way I feel in this job. I don't like the way I feel looking at my bank account. I don't like the way I feel,
Mhm.
in this relationship. And then you start asking yourself, well, what do I need to do to change that? And to
Okay.
do it in by taking the action steps and in doing it in an inspired way. For me, I tap into my creativity. For others, it's different. Everybody's different.
I get you. I see exactly where you're coming from now. Uh, what are the two biggest components to shifting your energy? Because that's what it looks like you
Hmm.
you do. You know, you
Yeah.
you send postcards out to the universe.
Hmm.
You know. So
Right.
what talk about that a little bit. And
Okay. Yeah, I tapped on one about gratitude, and I have found personally, and talking to other people, that gratitude is one of the most powerful ways to shift our energy. Sometimes we take for granted what we already have, and other people would, just die to have what we have, right?
mm,
So it's to start, the awareness of looking around you in your life, in your environment, and seeing what you already have and being grateful for it. And it's simple. And you start out small and you start out simple. You start out with, I'm grateful that I have food, to eat, that I have a warm, comfortable bed to sleep in, that I have wonderful relationships. And you start looking at those things and you make it a daily practice. I'm sure you've heard this before, and I'm sure other of your guests have talked about the power of gratitude. A wonderful thing to do is write down 5 things every night before you go to bed that you're grateful for that day. It could be a kind gesture, somebody holding a door open for you, somebody that you met out and about, a great conversation you had with a friend, just the little things that we don't think about anymore. A wonderful
mhm.
book you came across. It doesn't matter what it is, and make that a daily practice. And then the other thing that I talk about and I strongly recommend, and it's not easy, but I find it very powerful, is mirror work. And I got that from Louise Hay from Hay House. She had talked about it, and then I started doing it. And it's every single day looking at yourself in the mirror and telling yourself wonderful things about yourself. Because talk to yourself in the mirror the way you would talk to somebody you love, a child maybe. You would never say the cruel things to your children or your grandchildren or your loved ones that you say to yourself when you look in the mirror. And it's not easy at all, especially at first, because the first thing you do is criticize yourself when you look in the mirror. Oh, I'm starting to look old. I have gray. Look at my skin.
But if I did that, Melissa, if I was looking in the mirror and my grands were looking at me, they would think I'm crazy if I was just talking to myself, you know.
Well,
But
you do
but I
it. You do it in the morning in
but,
private,
okay.
where you, and at first it's very uncomfortable, but it
I,
begins to shift your energy and
I
you're starting
understand.
to fall in love with yourself.
I do understand where you're coming from. I have a little fun with it, but I do understand where you are.
But
I
James, if you showed your grandchildren that, you know what? Then they start young. So when they're
Mhm.
older, they'll have a kind of self confidence and a self love, because they'll be like, what do your grandchildren call you?
Makes a lot of sense, Poppy.
Poppy. They'll be like, oh, I learned this from Poppy, right?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Now let me ask you this, because I'm a minister. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, as a matter of fact, I'm a retired pastor, and one of the reasons I started this podcast was to uh, encourage, inspire, and hopefully transform lives.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody is going through something, they're struggling, they don't know quite, where they want to go next.
Mm-hmm.
Energy is low, uh,
Mm-hmm.
depressed, so it could be anything. From your experience and from the events in your life, what would you say to those individuals?
Yeah, I would say that you have to first honor whatever it is you're going through. Like, I'm not one of those woo-woo people that thinks all in the metaphysical, like you always have to be happy and you always have to be joyous and never show anger and never show grief. If something's happened to you and you're grieving, you need to go through the process. If you're angry about somebody hurting you or betraying you, you need to process those feelings, right? Our body needs to process it. We have to give ourselves that space. What I say to people is, let's try not to live in that space. Let's try not to live in resentment, because yes, there are people out there that are going to hurt you, and that's just the reality. People are going to betray you. You may lose some people in your life. You're going to be going through that grieving process, but don't live there. And if you need support, find the support, whatever the support is. And that's, like you said, you're a pastor, going to somebody you feel comfortable talking with. I would highly recommend getting the support that you want, reading books that inspire you. And then I would say just take small steps. I mean, if all you can do one day is, to feel good is, get yourself in the shower and go out to the grocery store and get yourself some food and cook yourself a meal, then pat yourself on the back for that one small
Mm.
thing, because they start to build on each other is what happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It's like a working out your muscles. It's practice. It's a daily practice. If prayer is important to you, then pray. Whatever it is for you that brings you a little bit of comfort in your life, try to focus there instead of going over the situation and the problem and the grief and the anger over and over. Because the more we do that, it's so easy to get wrapped up in that space, and we don't want to
Mhm.
live in that space.
Well said. Well said. Let me um, say this, and first of all, I guess I need to just tell listeners we're not finished. We're coming back, but I want to ask you, Melissa, uh, how can listeners of this podcast get more information about you? How can they find your books? Just share a little bit. with listeners about how they can ascertain these things that you're talking about?
Sure. So if you go to my website, which is www.postcardstotheuniverse.com, everything is on the website. The weekly postcards that I put with the affirmation, the links to all my social media, the place and how to create a manifesting postcard, links to where to buy my book, which is available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Online, you can purchase it there. It's also in bookstores. If you have any questions, my email is on there. The link to my radio show is on there, which is on Wednesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And then that also goes up on as a podcast, so you can always catch a replay. I interview a lot of inspired authors myself, who have some wonderful enlightening messages to share. So there's a lot of resources on postcardstotheuniverse.com, and I'm very easy to access. If anybody has any questions, they can always reach out to me.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I know listeners would truly appreciate that. Um, what next steps do someone need to take to move forward? It seems as if you are doing that. How would you tell that to somebody else? Excuse me. How would you tell it to somebody?
You mean somebody who is struggling moving
Yeah,
forward?
yeah.
I would say if you're struggling, the first thing to is ask yourself
Excuse me.
if you know of where you, like I said, you could get some support. If it's a friend, if it's actually somebody that you need to go outside of your friends, a professional, if it's a pastor, see where you can find some support would be the first step. And I would start journaling is always a wonderful thing to do. To get your feelings out on the page, journal, get it out. There's some rituals you can do if you need to write letters of forgiveness. You can write the letter. You don't have to mail it to the person, and you can tear it up or you can burn it just to release the pain from your body. Find ways to do that, and just start looking in your own life for those things that you already love and that you're so appreciative that you already have. I think those would be first easy steps. And give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. Don't be hard on yourself, I mean, you're doing the best that you can. People are always doing the best that they can with the tools that they have.
Let me ask you this: how how is tapping into your creativity one of the most powerful ways to manifesting abundance? That's very seem like
Yeah.
you deal with that a little bit. So can you talk about it some?
Sure. Well, I believe, like, if you've ever seen children when they're at play, the joy that comes out of them, you can feel it when you're around children who are joyful. And when we get creative inside of ourselves, whatever creativity looks for you. For me, it's photography, and for others, it's writing. For some people, maybe it's knitting, maybe it's cooking, maybe it's speaking, maybe it's hosting a podcast. It doesn't matter what it is, but you're tapping into that creativity. You're raising your energetic level to being more joyful. And the more joyful you are, the more you're going to attract other joyful things into your life, other people who are joyful, situations that you find yourself that are more joyful. So it's bringing that abundance back to you. So, I think when we become adults, we think we always have to be so serious. We have to, I got to make sure I have my bills paid, and I got to make sure, I have all my ducks in a line, and I have to make sure I work, 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 work. And we don't put any time aside for finding our own joy in our lives. And I feel like whatever turns you on creatively, I think that's a word, I'm making it up if it's not, is what's going to bring your joy back to you. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you feel joyful doing it.
Well, you have been very inspiring and uh, transformative with us today in your story, especially when you deal with your creativity, how you know, how you shift your energy.
Hmm.
This is something that I think listeners would be interested in hearing. So I just want to commend you on what you're doing and just tell you keep it up. That seems to be very, very powerful. Uh,
Thank you, James.
yeah. How do you make a powerful, magical manifesting postcard? Cute.
Well, I tell you all how to do it if you go to the website. I recommend creating the space for yourself to do it. A lot of people have heard of vision boards, especially around the new year. People make their vision board. So this is more of like a mini vision board. Pick something. You can send me as many postcards as you want. I have some people send me postcards for everything, which I love. I love getting them in the mail. I get so excited. um, Create the space, make it a sacred space. It's sacred time, it's sacred space. Turn your phone off, turn your television off, maybe put on some good music, maybe light a candle if that's your thing, and incense, whatever you like. Sit somewhere and get visual tools. You can download pictures off the internet. You can go old school and use magazines. You could paint. You could do whatever. I had one friend, she actually sent me postcards on little wood blocks. She painted on these little wood blocks and sent them. Like, just let your, be open to whatever. And, think about what it is you want. Is it a new relationship? Look in a magazine maybe for couples on their honeymoon, if that's what you're looking for, romance in your life. Just find the visuals that help along with what it is you want, and say, I am ready for the love of my life to enter into my life. Whatever. I'm just using that as or I'm ready for my dream home, and cut out pictures of your dream home and take a photo of your postcard when you're done, and so you have it, and then send it to me. And when your manifestation becomes your reality, then we'll share your story. you know
Oh, okay.
yeah, we'll share the story.
I got how you do it now, I think.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And there you have it. Melisa Caprio, who
Hmm.
is currently giving workshops on photography, art,
Hmm.
transformation, and manifestation. She got her class on how to create a unique postcard for added effect on the power of creative intention. She has also
Hmm.
been featured on Roar, Fierce Feminine, Rising Magazine,
Hmm.
Voyage, by way of Miami Magazine, and Shout Out Magazine. Meet Melisa Caprio. She's
Mm.
a regular contributor on Thrive Global. Melissa has been featured on numerous podcasts. Go out, check her out, check her books out, and I think you would truly enjoy Melissa Caprio. Melissa, thank you so very much for sharing with us today.
Thank you, James. It was my pleasure. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you, everybody. Hope
Thank
to see your postcard.
thank you. Thank you.